Hey there, everyone. So, I wanted to share two, you could call them meditation hacks, that I think are very crucial and have been very important for me to discover over the past, I think, probably year or two. I've really started to understand the import of them. So, I'm making this video specifically in some ways, and importantly for those of you who are in her mystery school just beginning or who have been in the school. I want you to be able to, if you're beginning with us, I want you to be able to move into the practices with these in mind, these two sensibilities in mind. Those of you who have been in the school, I offer these just to as a filling in. I know that now you're probably working in your own way and in your own world, either with the practices or what's developed for you from there. And I wanted to bring these in. They seem really important to me, and I don't feel like I highlighted them quite as much as I wish I would have. And then, of course, I think this is great for anyone who is working with the internal terrain, right? And what it is, what to differentiate between when we come to meditation, when we come to practice, and we're moving towards stillness, we're working to actually let ourselves be delivered into a kind of quietude that will open deeper knowing, wisdom, healing, energy, all these things, right? Perspective, discernment. So here are the two things. The first is open your eyes. So much of, and of course, if you are in the school, we close our eyes as we're coming in, right? And that is part of the movement. Part of the movement back, down, and in. Part of the movement of gathering is to close the eyes and give your eyes a break from looking, seeing, trying to understand, penetrating, right? It's a very intentional movement. And it does actually help attention, awareness, energy to kind of shift directions, shift polarity, and start to sink and saturate back into the body, start to bring us again to the center point. So this is wonderful. However, there is a way in which we can, and I can say this because I realized at a certain point that this is what I was doing. So for me, coming into stillness has always been kind of easy in a certain way, and it's been a place of refuge for me. And I know that that's not everyone's experience. And so this is for both of us kinds of people. So for those of you for whom stillness is really easy, you may find that you're a little bit like I have been, which is that, and I would come into stillness and I would come into quietude and it would be nourishing, but at a certain point I was actually hiding. If I track myself, the practice I was in or the state I was in was no longer actually nourishing and cultivating. It was too still. A friend of mine described it as spooky. And what I started to understand is that was the moment my nervous system crossed over from moving into relaxation and presence to a freeze response, right? And so what I want to invite you to do is just to notice with the understanding that I would argue that whoever we are and whatever tradition we're coming to contemplative or meditative practice inside of, we are cultivating something. Yes, we might be entering stillness and emptying. There are lots of intentions behind guided practices and meditations. However, I would argue that ultimately we're cultivating something. We are cultivating the nourishment of silence. We are cultivating stillness as a potency. We're closing our eyes and letting the dark wash over and make us more substantial, more unto ourselves. There's so much there. So this, for me, it's a very important distinction that I'm coming into stillness. I'm coming into my internal world, not to hide and not to freeze there, because I actually want to open up and fill and unfurl and decompress inside of my practice around whatever's happening, right? So I offer this to you as an invitation and something to work with, is when you are coming into stillness, if at a certain point you find that if it's a guided meditation that you're not really able to stay with it, or you can't keep your mind from moving around, or you start to feel anxiety or restless, just open your eyes And it seems really simple, but it's doing multiple things. For one thing, when you open your eyes, if you're moving into a sympathetic state, if you're moving into a freeze state, when you open your eyes, you give your whole system a sight on the terrain, and it can break that movement. It can shift you out of the movement into the freeze and just give your system a sense of relief and perspective on a physiological level. The other thing that it's doing is it will start to rejoin your internal world with the outer world. I think one of the things that happens for those of us who have kind of a very big inner world, and one that is rich but may need a lot of management, is that if you're subtle in your sensitivities and you're alive in that way, sometimes the bridging between all that you can feel or that you are feeling, for good or bad, inside, and the everything that's moving on the outside, bridging that can be difficult. A lot of times in the school we'll discover things. We work with revelatory practices where we are actually revealing wisdom and internal knowing and kind of revealing true nature to ourselves. Well, that's great in internal practice, but then what happens when you move out into life again? And so what we want to do also is pay attention to weaving the internal and external so that there's not a break there and things can stay integrated. I think this would apply, you'll think about it for yourself, but even for if you are a meditator who just is really able to go into these deep states of stillness, to open your eyes from that place with a diffused gaze. That's the important thing. We're not opening our eyes into the normal penetrative, analytic taking in of the world. This is a diffuse gaze, a softened gaze that is receiving what is around you, just receiving colors, just softly opening while you remain connected to this return to your own presence. So we're not leaving ourselves through our eyes in this. It's a matter of okay, I'm here. And at a certain point, if you need to, just open your eyes there, knowing that what you're doing is if you're feeling it, you're breaking any kind of movement into a freeze that's happening in your neurology. And you're also giving yourself an opportunity to just in this kind of quiet container, this moment of refuge, to start feeling what it is to be available to the world, to be aware of what's around you, and yet still hold that internal poise. So I offer that to some of you, especially if you're working with anxiety, a really restless mind, if kind of sitting still and meditation isn't that natural or easy for you, but you want it, or if it's supernatural to you, but you're not actually cultivating in it, you feel like there's, if you start to notice that there's a certain lack of integration or a lack of, at least especially in deep feminine way, we come to practice to fill back in. We come to practice to unfurl into all that we are, to open space and to actually irrigate our beings with the good. We don't want to be shut down. We want to come into a more deeply receptive place so that the good can actually reach us and so that we can partake of it. So that's one thing, open your eyes. The other is this piece about movement, and specifically movement that works with ancient, deep feminine currents. These are movements that are ubiquitous to temple dance, belly dance. They're very natural and important to the female body. And what I would offer is that it's similar. If you want to move into stillness, which, unless we quiet our waters, unless we still the pond, it's really hard to see clearly. And unless we gather and we kind of settle from all the dispersions and from all the overstimulation, it's very hard to really cultivate potency. Stillness is real important. It has a substance to it. However, it's not easy. I feel like a lot of my students, a lot of people will kind of set themselves up for failure by expecting that they're going to be able to go from whatever they are, Mach 50, to stillness just by closing their eyes and their intention. Sure, that's great if you can. If you cannot, whether regularly or in a moment, I would offer to you that it can be really important, helpful, and true to remember that stillness and movement are existing on a continuum, and that maybe what will help you arrive to a really living stillness rather than just sitting in the discomfort of not being able to move, that is to use currents of movement that will meet you where you are and bring you to stillness. So what I mean by that is, whatever, we're moving in all the ways that we do. Your mind is moving in all the ways that it moves. And so when you're starting to come into stillness and when you're wanting to move into a more cultivating state, what I would invite, if you're restless, is to consider spirals and waves. Real simple. These are ancient patterns of movement, especially through the female body. And if you start to ride those currents in your body slowly and subtly, what will happen is you will meet everything that's moving in you. So instead of fighting it to try to get it to go to stillness, you meet it and you just start to entrain and orient all that's moving in you to a more harmonious, more integrative, and more a more ancient, right, current of movement that will carry you to stillness. This is about understanding that when we come to practice, we are letting ourselves be delivered into stillness. We're letting ourselves be delivered into alignment, at least in deep feminine way in the school. And then I offer this to you if you're not in the school, that there is quite a difference between kind of white knuckling it or efforting your way into focus. That's one thing, and it is what it is. In deep feminine way, what we're looking for is reunification. We're realigning with ancient currents, natural law, divine law, that will just deliver us to stillness. That there's an effortlessness in it, and in that effortlessness is the cultivation, right? We're now just, the only thing that you're being asked to point your will force to in this way is to choose to enter the stillness and be nourished by it, right? To enter the stillness and come home to yourself in that place. And in that, you may put your will force towards, okay, in order to get there, what will deliver me there, right? And maybe you just sink right in. But if not, these currents of movement in the body will help you, will deliver you to stillness. And even if it's just a moment, say you're in the school and you're listening to, a 20 or 30 minute guided practice. Well, you could spend the first 15 minutes just in this movement until it really naturally brings you into stillness. And even if it's 30 seconds, 5 minutes of sitting in that living stillness, there's so much more there for you than there would be if you force yourself to just close your eyes and try to, stay present with your racing mind and stay present with your restless body. Instead, why not actually deliver your body and deliver your mind into stillness and really drink, have that moment to drink. So, you can't see my body fully in this video, but what you're looking for are, just imagine a spiral in your mind and follow it with your body, with your shoulders, with your heart, with your belly, your hips, right? And the subtlety of it is what's important, right? In order for it to bring you to stillness, there has to be stillness in it. It can't be frenetic, right? This is not, we're bringing ourselves into contact with a movement pattern that actually changes neurology and changes your brain state, changes your heart, right? So as slow as you can go and as subtle, just simple spirals and letting yourself fall into them, right? Just every second of them, just let them take your awareness completely until they get more and more slow and more subtle until it's just a movement in your stillness, right? This is the same thing with waves, right? Which would be, okay, maybe you're one of these people who likes to rock back and forth a little bit when she's sitting still. This is also a current, a geometry in the body that is ancient and integrating. And it can be anything. A wave, an undulation, the serpentine current, that's what we're working with here in both of these cases, is a serpentine current that moves through the body. So it could start, it starts at your hips and it just moves until it moves out. And it can move any way, there's no, you're in your own privacy. This is about a subtle movement in your body and how it wants to move. Right? So in some ways, I realize that this is just kind of pointing at something, but I don't know that I need to do more than point to it for you. A serpentine movement, meaning it starts and it goes until it completes. There is a completion to the movement, and you let it move through your body, right? Same way with the spiral. And the important thing is that in your body, you let it be slow, you let it feel good, and you let it get more and more slow and more subtle until it delivers you to stillness. Thinking of that too as a bridge, in the same way that opening your eyes can allow you to create a bridge between the external world and your internal terrain. This kind of movement can bridge you from more chaotic movement, the static, the frenetic, ways in which you've been dispersed and you're a little out of yourself and moving too fast. And it can deliver you from that, rejoin you to the continuum, and deliver you to stillness so that you move from that stillness back out into however you're moving in the world with an integrated state of being, right? With much more resource. And then also that, in the school, sometimes, we are cultivating stillness and all these things, but, a lot of our practices in the school, we are working with specific sensibilities each week in deep feminine tradition. So you are, within those practices, you're also, attuning, aligning yourself, dropping yourself deeper into your own being so that you can access your insight, your knowing, and your remembrance of these many different deep feminine sensibilities and or your own internal terrain, right? In the school, we're developing nuance. How do you know your truth? How do you locate yourself fully in your own body and in the center of your world? All these things, right? So if you allow yourself, the most important thing is notice when you're just enduring a practice or you're just enduring your meditation. And I understand that there are some schools of thought that would say, good, you sit there and you just be uncomfortable and that's good for you. And it probably is. I mean, I sit in a lot of discomfort and I hope that there's been benefit to that. But in this case, especially in the school, that's not our volition. Our volition is cultivation. Our volition is restoration, remembrance. Our volition is to rejoin and be delivered into something more true, something that resources us, something that can guide us, right? And fill us back in. We're addressing depletions in, specifically in the school, we're addressing depletions in the female body, the female psyche, in your energetic system as a woman. So we don't want to be efforting, especially against against anything chaotic or bewildering or too fast, too much, etc. that's in your system. Don't go to bat with that. Just meet it and let it find its way to stillness. Let it be delivered. So those are my offerings to you. And I do develop those a little bit more in the school, especially as the curriculum goes on. But if you're watching this and you're in the school, I made this for you so that you would have these two pieces to take with you specifically around the practices, so that they really do become cultivation practices for you that you like to go to. And how you move towards them is really what makes that difference, right? For those of you who've been in the school, maybe, I offer you this. I feel like I want now to highlight these things much more than I did in the past. And for those of you who are not in the school, I hope you find this useful. I hope that this sparks something for you. I hope you find it helpful in terms of whatever your practice is and however you are attending to your instrument and your internal world, that these maybe can, opening your eyes and finding these deep finding the serpentine current and being delivered to the state. I hope that really opens something for you if you play around with it, that it opens deeper levels of real nourishment and a sense of belonging in your practice even more. So thank you all, and bless your practice, bless your beautiful internal terrain, bless your hidden sacred. I think, a lot of this, I'm making this because we just did Song of Her Soul, which was a little mini retreat, and this is part of what I ended up talking a lot about, in addition to tending the sacred. I think what I'm going to do is have Sequoia. So if you're getting this in the newsletter, I'll have Sequoia put. I'll have her discount that in case you want to watch that. We talk a little bit about this. I guide a practice around this with those sensibilities included. So that would be, it's like a 2.5 hour little mini retreat with all sorts of things in it, but especially these things. So I'm going to I'll have her make a discount button for that for you if you would like to access that. Anybody, you don't have to be in the school just for that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I guess we'll just put it in the comments below in case you would like to deepen a little bit into this. In the meantime, enjoy. I hope this serves. Blessed be.